I'm Ruth Cole Burkaw. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Cooperative Ministries. And boy, we're living in some extraordinary times, aren't we? I expect people to continue to join the meeting. What I'm going to do right now is introduce you to our other hosts. You're going to be seeing some of Hannah. She'll be talking a little bit, and then Austin. Hannah is our special projects manager. That's the person you might get our emails from. And then Austin is our technical production coordinator. He does a lot of our video programming that you might see on our YouTube channel. What I'm gonna do now is share my screen. But bear with us because we're new at this too. I'm like, oh, we're going to teach people how to do Zoom. Do we know everything about Zoom? Well, no, we don't know everything about Zoom, but we have done quite a lot of meetings. And so we wanted to share with you the knowledge that we do have. And hopefully that will be helpful. If you have questions as we go, put them in the chat box. If you see the chat box down at the bottom of your screen, you should have a menu there. And there's one that looks like a little word bubble and it says chat. If you click that, it'll appear either to the side or it'll pop up into the middle of your screen. Just make sure that when you ask your question, you're asking it to everyone so that we can all see what you're asking and be able to help you get the answer that you need. I'm going to share my screen with you now. As a presenter, I can do that. I can also control whether or not I can let other people share their screens. Today, it's going to just sort of be Hannah and I think, who are going to be sharing our screens, but I'm going to move to a different format. And what's going to happen is the view you currently have will change dramatically. You may not see yourself anymore. You may not see a lot of people anymore. You'll probably be in a little tall bar over to the right of your screen. So I'm going to hit share. I'm going to share my entire screen, which means I can navigate around my whole computer. And you'll should be seeing my screen, and then you should be seeing, everybody sort of to the right. So what I've got here, and this is an interesting little tip and trick, you can create a PowerPoint and you can share it and you can put it up as a slideshow. It'll take up your whole screen, which is kind of problematic if you want to see everybody on the right. But you can minimize that on the right. If you go to the very top of the cameras, you'll see there's several different buttons there. One minimizes that whole box completely. One shows you a bunch of people, and then you've got some in between. You can also click on that bar at the top and actually slide this thing around so that it's a little more conveniently located for you. Just keep in mind, those of you on devices, some of this may not apply directly to you in terms of where things are, because devices are all a little differently depending on whether they're Android or iPhone. Just don't be afraid to click. That's what Hannah always tells me, the millennial that she is. Don't be afraid to click and figure it out. But what I have done here is I created my slideshow in PowerPoint, and then I saved it as a PDF. And then when I came into my PDF, I went and found the navigation pane so that I can actually see what slides are coming up. So I've kind of created a little ad hoc slide for me, but that way people can generally see what's in the middle of the screen pretty easily. I want to kick us off today with a reminder of our daily text. Everybody just needs to take a minute, take a deep breath and breathe, right? Remembering the promise of the Lord turned toward Israel because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and would not destroy them, nor has he banished them from his presence until now. And from Romans, the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. And prayer. Lord Almighty, you made a covenant to be our God. May your steadfast faithfulness toward us inspire us to love and care for others just as you do for us. Amen. This is easy enough to share. I screenshotted it right out of my email and just put it right in my PowerPoint. So that's easy enough to pull things from other places. Today, here's what we're going to cover. A lot of ground in a short period of time. We want to be done by 11:15. If you need to leave us, we understand. We are recording the session, and we do plan to get it out along with the notes and the links that we'll share today to you later in the meeting. It'll either be on the website or we'll email it to you, or both probably. We're going to learn a little Zoom etiquette. We're going to tour what I'm calling the meeting environment as a host. We're going to show you how to pick a plan and create an account in Zoom. We're going to learn how to schedule a meeting, how to share your meeting, teach attendees how to join a meeting, and troubleshoot. And that sounds really, really ambitious, but so strap in and let's see if we can figure this out. So some general Zoom etiquette for us, and this is good to share with really any attendees, you know, as you get ready to have a meeting. I did a prayer meeting last night with my own home congregation, Unity Moravian, and I shared some of these tips with them as the meeting got going. The Zoom mullet, that seems to be a new phrase these days. That means, look, I've got my earrings on and my makeup on and my nice necklace and my nice sweater, but I'm wearing joggers and slippers from the waist down. So that's the Zoom mullet. But it is helpful to look the part. I mean, I know we're all being a little cash here during the pandemic, but if you're the presenter, it's helpful to kind of look the part, right? Mute yourself when you're not talking. And we'll talk more about the host capabilities to mute you if you don't do that. Sometimes it is helpful to use headphones or earbuds. It just makes the audio experience better for everybody and for yourself if you can hear. Sometimes you can hear a lot better if you're using earbuds. Keep your video on if you like. It's always nice to be able to see everybody, but sometimes our internet connections become unstable. And if that's the case, then you can stop your video. And that's the button there that looks like a camera. It's right next to the mic button. And so if you feel like you're freezing up, or if you get a message that says your internet is unstable or your bandwidth is low, then you should go ahead. It really does help save some bandwidth to go ahead and stop your video, okay? That's not the preferred thing though. And then use the chat box rather than interrupting the speaker. I'm not monitoring the chat box now. I'm letting someone else do that because I'm trying to focus on the presentation, but it is helpful to have somebody else who is doing that for you. But if you're a participant, you want to use the chat box to ask questions or get clarification. And we'll look at the chat box in a minute, but you'll notice that you can even have private conversations in the chat box. I say select a view, a screen view that works for you. I've said here, select the gallery view. It's up in the top right-hand corner of your screen. It might say speaker view. It might say your shared screen. Gallery view shows kind of everybody together. But you're the ones who, for the most part, can control what kind of view you have. It's not me, it's you. You control the view. If you are gonna, if we have a chance to do some questions and answers, when it's your turn, if you would just say, hey, it's John, my question is this. It's just helpful when we have this many people on a meeting, it's kind of hard to keep up with who's who and where they are and remember what their voice sounds like. Rename yourself. You just can click on your name, right click or tap on your name and rename yourself so people can see who you are. So it doesn't just say iPhone. And then try to give the meeting your full attention, especially if the video is on. If you've got things you need to be doing, fine, but I recommend you both mute yourself and stop your video so that we don't see you petting your cat or working out the arrangements for the vet visit with your son, you know, while the meeting's going on. So that's just some general meeting etiquette. Specifically for hosts, there are a few other things to think about. Make sure your face has sufficient lighting. I look great now, right? Yeah. Yeah. Now this is not really a good look for a host. Okay. Look, yeah, it's great. It helps if the lighting is in front of you, is somewhat in front of you. You don't want to be too washed out. But it really does help to like open up a test meeting and just test out some things. It's helpful to try to get your face more in the center of the screen. And to position the camera at eye level or a little bit above, like just like selfies, we look better when we're below the camera, right? Not when we really aren't going to want to be like, you know, showing everybody other parts of ourselves in our rooms. So we're trying to position our face in the center of the screen. Try to select a quiet location. I mean, sometimes this is impossible given the fact that we're all now living with everybody we love all the time. But do the best you can to find a space that's quiet, maybe close to your Wi-Fi router. If your husband or wife is going to be on the call, your significant other, just be on the call together. Don't try to each be on a device that's going to suck your bandwidth, but it's also can create some real issues for feedback in the meeting. As the host, be welcoming, be in charge, greet people as they enter as much as you can. Don't be afraid to redirect the conversation and mute people. You're the most in charge, and you want to create a meeting environment that is useful for everyone, and is respectful of everyone. And as the meeting host, really, that's your job, to keep everybody moving and keep everybody, you know, quiet and in a way that so that they can all be attentive and get the most out of the meeting as possible. Sometimes it's helpful to create a plan. Again, it depends on how many meeting participants you have. But when you have a lot of folks, you should be able to see in your participant box, which we'll look at in a minute, a place to raise your hand. So you could ask your participants to raise their hand and speak. You could ask them to put something in the chat box to say, I have a question, or please unmute me so I can ask you something. Just come up with a way to do that so people aren't just talking over each other constantly as they're trying to participate. So think through how you might want to allow interaction in your meeting. Just sort of think through that. And then when you're speaking, you can look at the camera as well. I'm probably not doing that because I'm reading off the screen, but if you're talking to people, look directly into your webcam. It's a little bit of a weird feeling, but I think it is a little more personal, makes people feel a little more welcome. So that's Zoom etiquette. A lot of times what happens to us when we're first on a meeting is we lose the meeting. Like we click to check our email, it pops up, a notification pops up, which I recommend closing, by the way, but you move away from the meeting and then you can't get back to the meeting. You go to your Google Chrome or you go to your internet and you can't find it. You're going to look for this little camera, this little white camera. That's my taskbar on my computer. So typically if you get lost and you can't figure out where you are, go back to your taskbar on your computer, or wherever your apps are all located. Whenever it is that you find all your apps, it's going to look like that. And it's usually its own little standalone widget that you have to click in order to bring the meeting back up. So I just wanted to make that note in case anybody gets lost during the Zoom. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to tour the meeting environment. If you slide your mouse down the page on the desktop computer, your control bar should pop up. Okay. As a participant, your control bar looks a little different than mine. So what I've got here on the slide is my control bar. So you can see that I maybe have just a few things that are a little different, but you can control a lot of this. So first of all, we'll start on the left and just move across, and I'll sort of quickly explain what each thing is. The mute button, hopefully everybody has found that in some way, shape, or form. And you'll notice there might be a little caret to the right of that gives you a whole menu. So if you click the caret, you'll see a menu that should say select a microphone, select a speaker, test speaker and microphone. So this is your audio settings is what that little caret represents next to the mic. Okay. As a host, you can, and I'll show you this in a minute, you can mute everybody. You have the power. You can also set settings in advance to not allow people to unmute themselves so that you can completely control whether or not they can speak or not, basically, in the meeting. But the program is very flexible, so you can do pretty much anything you want to do there. But with most meetings, they assume people want to talk, so I think that the default is that folks can unmute themselves. But as host, you can control a lot of that audio. People are responsible for their own audio settings, though. So typically, if someone can't hear you, it's a problem with the settings on their computer. So they need to go into their audio or sound settings and make sure that they have selected the correct microphone and speaker in order to hear or be heard. Okay. Then next to that on the right is the stop video button. Again, that's what I was talking about when I said if your bandwidth is low or your internet connection is unstable, if you click that button, it will close off your video. And similarly, to the right of that is the caret that is your video settings. Some of you may have more than one option for video. You may have a webcam as well as an internal, some other or external camera. And you'll be able to select your camera there if you have more than one. And then you can go in There are some fun things there. I think depending on what kind of operating system you have, you can choose a virtual background. You can click that button and upload any number of fun backdrops for you, and that can be fun. So you can choose a virtual background. I think you can even do a custom background. The other day I was in a meeting with Mike Reese, who had the large Moravian star from this year's daily text or last year's daily text behind him on the screen. So that's kind of a fun little perk. Next to that, you may have an invite button with, it looks like a little person with a plus sign on it. I don't use this very often. Typically, I do all my meeting inviting prior to the meeting, meaning, you know, I will create a meeting and then copy the information I need to invite, like I did with you all sharing the Zoom link beforehand. But occasionally you get into a meeting, you think, oh, we need Mike in on this meeting. He's not here. You can click the invite button. It'll pop up your email client, either your Gmail or your Outlook or whatever it is you want to use. And you can immediately send an invitation to Mike or whomever from the meeting. That can occasionally be handy. So it's especially helpful for smaller, I think smaller, more intimate meetings. Next to the invite button is you probably have a button that says participants. And if you click that button on probably the right side of your screen or in the middle of your screen, you'll see a list of everybody who's in the meeting. As the host, I have the opportunity to also actually manage the participants. And my manage participant box looks a little bit like this. So on the left, you can see my box. On the right is what your box should approximately look like. So as the host, that's where I'm able to mute everybody or unmute everybody. And then there's actually a more button that allows me to do a few additional things. From that, I can decide whether I want to mute participants when they come into the meeting, which I think is a good idea. If you generally can do that, I would have everybody be muted when they enter your meeting. It's just a little bit easier to manage. This is where you allow participants to unmute themselves, allow them to rename themselves. And this is where you can actually turn that annoying chime off and on, you know, so that we don't hear every time someone comes or goes in a meeting. You can turn that off and on. And you can also lock your meeting from this more menu. I haven't really fiddled with that, but what I think that means is, like, if I lock the meeting now, no one else could get in. So it's literally like actually locking the meeting from additional folks joining. So that's the Manage Participants button. Let me go back a slide here. Next is polls, and this is kind of fun. I think it's see how you could incorporate this into maybe a small group meeting or something fun. I'm launching the poll now. It should be appearing in the middle of your screen. You go ahead and answer those questions. You see you've got, I think, about a minute to answer those two questions. One is, what is your favorite color? And then one is, how is your church responding to the pandemic? So just, yeah, go ahead and click your answers. You can actually set up the polling questions ahead of time. You can do it when you schedule your meeting. You do have to enable polling in the settings for your account. And you can also do polling on the fly. I mean, I could also go in now and add another question if I wanted to during the meeting and pop it up too. But it's easier, especially if you know you want to ask some very specific questions, maybe to get the meeting going. It's helpful to have done that ahead of time. Okay. I'm giving a little more time for you all to answer the question, because then I can show you the responses. There's also a way with the polling to make it anonymous. Someone asked that question previously prior to the meeting. You can click a button to make it anonymous. I really only experienced that as anonymous, but you can very deliberately make it anonymous polling, is my understanding. So I've still got a few more who are finding their poll and answering the questions. Now, I don't know, can you guys see the responses going up right now? Chris, Teen, shake your head. I can see Christine and John writes. That's all I can see. Okay, so I'm still looking. I can see in live time as the host, I can see the responses. Like I know that 30 of 53 of you have voted at this point, 56%. So I can choose to let it run. For the purpose of time, I'm going to end the polling. I have a button that says end polling. And so then it will give me a new set of buttons that says share results or relaunch polling. So I'm now going to share the results, and you should be able to now see what people said. So we see we have a lot of blue fans in the room. And then question number 2. We're all pretty much at that beginning part, aren't we? Working to launch some digital options. And then I can stop sharing the results and exit out of the polling functionality. So the poll is a really cool little widget that can be kind of helpful and fun in your meetings. Moving on, the share controls. Like I said, you should have a green share button in the middle of your control bar. The host has that as well. There are some cool things you can do with sharing your screen. You can also actually do things like hand the screen off to somebody else. Like if I wanted Hannah to take over at this point, I could actually click a button on my menu that says, you know, give your screen sharing to someone else, and they can actually use control my computer from where they are and continue with the presentation with my screen being shared. So there's some cool little things you can do with screen share. It gets awkward, and screen sharing all the time is not always the best, especially if your meeting is designed to be maybe like a sharing meeting or a meeting where you want people to have a conversation. You don't necessarily have to have a PowerPoint and share your screen, but it is handy for things like, where can I find the Moravian liturgies on moravian.org? Okay, I'll just share my screen real quick and take you to that page, and everybody can see where to go. So there are times when it's nice to be able to just quickly have people share their screens. That's not typically necessary. The chat button, hopefully I can tell from the activity in the chat that people have found the chat. But the chat button is a cool place to go. Let me see if I can. This is what my chat box looks like. I don't think it looks much different than yours. You can see where it says 2, you have a drop-down box, and you should be able to sort of see everybody individually, so that if I wanted to send a message just to Gregorio, I could click Gregorio's name in the chat box and write him a note. And then when he responds, it would just come back to me. Likewise, so you have to be real mindful of that, because if you're going to trash talk Zach, you don't want to have it say everyone. You know, you want to be sure that you're just sending it to your good friend John G, and then only you and John G will see that conversation, and Zach won't see it. So be real careful about how this is. In other meetings, it might say, I think that's actually just for the webinar, so never mind. That you'll see sort of have an everyone option or specific people option. That's kind of how that works. So that's the chat. The chat is really cool. Later on, Hannah's going to upload a file to the chat. So you can actually, like if you've got a PDF you want to share with everybody, maybe a liturgy or the bishop's letter, and you want to share it with everybody in your meeting, you can actually literally, like, you upload a file to your computer for whatever purpose. You can click that file button and upload the file. And as long as it's in a format that people can open on their computer, which I recommend a PDF, then everybody can click the download button and open that. So the chat box has some cool functionality there. Let me see go back to this page. You can record meetings, and my understanding is even in the free version of Zoom, you can record meetings, but I think in the free version, you have very limited storage space and you can't do it in the cloud. If you have a paid account, you actually have a cloud-based storage option for recording meetings, which is kind of cool. And then you'll get when you record, you just hit that record button and stop it if you want to stop it. When you end the meeting, it stops. Then what happens is Zoom processes that video and they'll email you a link to it, or you can go back into the back end of Zoom and access the video. That means you can share the link with other people, so other people can watch it later. So that's a very cool feature as well. It does take up a lot of space, and you do need to go in periodically to the back end of your account and maybe clear out the recordings and things. Another cool feature that we're going to try out right now real quickly is called the breakout room feature. And that's neat. I mean, if you're doing something and you've got a large group and you want to have them talk in smaller groups, you just can hit the breakout rooms. I don't think you'll be able to see my pop-up, but I'm able to assign, I have 51 participants, and I can decide that I want them to be in 6 different rooms. So I'm going to have 8 to 9 participants per room. I get to choose whether I want to automatically assign people to a room or whether I want to manually assign them to a room. So I could click manually and go in and say, okay, I want Amanda and Zach and John and so together, or I can just randomly split them up using the automatic function. I'm creating my rooms. I've just created 6 breakout rooms. Here's what's going to happen. I've got a button that says open all rooms, and the program will send you guys to these 6 different rooms. You can say hello to each other, mute and unmute, right? I will be able to send you broadcast messages that are, visible, not audio messages. It's like a chat message, and I'll give you a warning. It'll be very short, very brief time in small groups, but and I will be able to pull you back, so you don't have to actually do anything. You just wait for me to send you to the room and wait for me to bring you back to the main meeting room. Okay, is everybody ready? As the host, I can see that like breakout room 1 is empty. Breakout room 2 still has Hopeton and Dave and Kurt in it. I don't hope they don't get kicked off, but they might get kicked off when the 1 minute is up. So the 1 minute is now up. So hopefully many of you are back in the main meeting room. I think you did have to actually click something, didn't you, to go to the room, right? Like when it was time to open the rooms, did you have to click a button to go to the room? I think so. So that's a pretty cool feature, though, the breakout feature, and I see how it could be very useful for small group sessions and having an opportunity to have a more intimate conversation about a topic. So I think there's a really cool potential for the church with the breakout room function. I do think that's still a function of the free account, but I do believe that you're limited by time, so it may be harder to pull off with the free account, but it is a function of the free account. And last but not least, on your control bar there at the far right, it should say end the meeting. I think when you're a participant, it says leave the meeting. But as the host, when you end the meeting, everybody else gets kicked off too. So just be aware of that. If you have to step away from a meeting that you've scheduled and you're the host for, clicking end meeting will get rid of everybody. So you can designate alternate hosts and co-hosts so that you have some flexibility there in terms of handing a meeting over if you have to leave early or things like that. Those are things you can learn on the back end of the program. I think I've covered the meeting environment so pretty well so far. Austin, do I need to come back and look at some questions about the meeting environment, or are we pretty good in that regard?
I've got a few questions here that people ask, and I can just go through them and you can answer them because I saved them all in a note on my computer.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
So here's a couple. So going back to the very beginning of the presentation, Gregorio asks about the PowerPoint that you were sharing from your screen share. And he was wondering if you just pulled that directly out of your email and then went to share.
I mean, I have PowerPoint software on my computer. I've also used Google Slides, which is a free program anybody can get. And I just created the PowerPoint on my hard drive, saved it to my hard drive. And then prior to the meeting, you have to do a little advanced prep because you want to have everything kind of at your fingertips when you start your meeting. Prior to the start of the meeting, I pulled it back up, made sure it said everything I wanted it to say, saved it as a PDF, then went in and opened it up in Adobe Reader as a PDF. But you can just start with a slideshow or just start with a meeting and don't even worry about all the AV. Once you get comfortable with the meeting environment, it gets easier to try new things.
And Gregorio, if you want to just type in the chat, did that answer your question or? Okay, he says yes. Wonderful. Okay, so Beth chimes in with a little bit of advice and saying, when recording, do not use the gallery view as it will be recorded and you will have to get everyone's permission if you're going to post it on a website or on social media.
That is helpful information. Those are things we haven't really thought about at this point.
Right, right. Let's see. Oh, of course, Tim Byerly and Hannah already responded to Tim, but he said that posting the slideshow for later view would be great help. And if, in case anyone missed that in the chat, we will be posting a resource compiling that slideshow and a bunch of other things to the BCM website, probably within the next day or so. Let's see, and Nola makes the note that a poll could be helpful if you need a secret ballot vote. I guess that would be in the context of like a church board meeting, perhaps. I don't know, Ruth, you might be able to answer this question more specifically, but it's like, I guess it would depend on the board's policies if they allow for e-voting, or would this be okay?
I think in these extraordinary times, the board can decide for themselves what.
Fair enough.
My guess. I don't know. That's not an official PEC response, but
okay, fair enough.
Just a guess.
And Walter asks, when breakout rooms are active, does the chat go to everyone or just to your breakout room? And I'm pretty sure it just goes to the breakout room. Yeah. Tim also asks, with multiple rooms, can participants choose their own room?
I don't think so. I've looked at that too. I mean, I think you could say, hey, Ruth, I want to be in Zach's room ahead of time, or you could put it on the chat, right? And I could manually assign it, but I don't think it has the option to say, let's all go to the room where you can talk about spiritual growth. I'm not sure. You might have to on the fly say, okay, room 1. I don't really know how that would work. It could get kind of bogged down to try and have people choose in that moment who they want to be with. I think that would be pretty tricky.
Nola also asks, how many breakout rooms can run at once?
I'm not sure, actually. It has a little box where you can pick, and I don't know how high up it goes, honestly. You know what I mean? My guess is it could go up to as many people as in your it wouldn't be as many in your meeting, but maybe as many as you could have at least two in a meeting. I think that's very much a possibility.
Okay, let's see.
Oh, it's Wonder Woman.
Yep. Most important question.
Very important.
So Kay asks, or she says, I see an edit menu with a pencil icon that has the host's name at the bottom right of her iPad screen. What is that? She asks.
That's a great question. I'm not sure.
When you say host, Kay, do you mean Ruth?
We could, yeah, you can unmute yourself, Kay.
Yes, and it was on the left, not the right. I'm directionally impaired. I turned around my view.
That's all right.
It was there intermittently, and when I clicked on it, it showed icons that indicated highlight. So I wondered if that was a way to interact.
Yes.
Participant.
Yes, and I meant to show you that, but there's actually an annotate feature. It may say edit on some people's devices, but I think on the computer it says annotate when you're in share screen mode. And people, you can of course set this up so that only you could do it, or your participants. You can actually, circle things on the screen, annotate the screen, if you will. I think you can also use a whiteboard. When you go to the share screen menu, you have the choice of picking like an application on your computer that you want to share, or the whole screen for your whole computer, or you can do a whiteboard and you guys can like literally make notes together of things, or doodle together, or there's a lot of possibilities there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Mike did some research and said up to 50 rooms can be created according to Zoom. So
wow.
That's very robust. Yeah.
So someone whose username is just an exclamation mark says, just to confirm, the free subscription to Zoom only allows for 40 minutes, question mark?
Right. That's true. Hannah's going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to move to the looking at the plans.
Mm-hmm. Marie asks, can you have files uploaded and ready at the bottom of the screen before the meeting starts, or do you have to pull them up when you want them?
I mean, I think you could do either. I mean, you can go into the meeting early as the host, Marie, and then click on that file button and they'd all be there queued up at the top of the chat. You know, that would be one way to do it. You can't really have them like in a holding space. I mean, you know, what I did for this meeting was I just created a folder on my computer that said Zoom webinar, you know, so that when I want to upload it, I can just go right to that folder to pull it from. So, I mean, either way.
Mm-hmm. And Dee has a question that I don't really understand what she's trying to ask. So Dee, would you mind unmuting your microphone and just asking Ruth directly?
Yes. Are we going to learn how to, if we have more than one host, how to go from one host to the other host and then back again?
Probably not today. I think I've already seen a need for maybe an advanced training. So what we may do is an advanced training where we explore some of those more complicated features, because there is a lot you can do. Although you can do it, Dee, kind of without, I mean, you know, as long as everybody has the ability to share, if you're sharing screen or whatever, if you wanted, like, you know, next, if Hannah needs to share her screen, she can just share her screen. You don't have to physically pass it off, as it were, as long as the controls are set such that people can engage each other freely.
Well, that was going to be my second question, is about if I click on share screen, does that automatically send my screen to everybody?
Yes.
It does. Okay. Because I was just going to play with that and I didn't want to send it.
Yeah, and that's why you can lock that feature down. I mean, when you're setting up the meetings, you can say, I don't want people to be able to share the screen unless they're me, basically, you know, and that is when you would want to then have to pass off the baton, as it were, among people if you needed to do it that way.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say, as a quick note on privacy, you should probably, like, before, if you intend on screen sharing, you should probably close out any tabs or anything that might have personal information in them. Like, for example, if you've got your bank account open in a tab, or if you've got like your Facebook account open in a tab, and you don't want everybody to see the grandkids as much as you love them. So just keep in mind your own privacy when you're doing things like that. Let's see, we had another question here pop through. So Gregorio says, I can't find the breakout in small groups or breakthrough icon in my computer. I would probably say that's because Gregorio is just an attendee, not an administrator.
I think it's only hosts can see like the polls feature and the breakout rooms feature. That's only for hosts. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. I want to move us along because I'm aware of our time.
Okay, sure.
So thanks, Austin. You've done a terrific job.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for your great questions.
I'm gonna try to find Hannah. Hannah, start talking.
I'm right here.
There she is. So if you're in speaker view, the person who's speaking will be the person in the middle of your screen. But as a host, you can actually spotlight a video. So if I wanted it to just be Hannah, I could click on Hannah and make her the spotlight video. So there's that option as well. Go ahead.
Okay, so what I'm going to walk through are the different plan options and how to create an account. So I am going to start sharing my screen now. And you should all be seeing my Google. So what you need to do is just go to Zoom, well, helps if I spell Zoom.us, and then you are going to see Zoom's website. And I'm going to just talk you through the different plans so you know what would be the best fit for your situation in your church. So right here, it shows the different options. Right now, since for the foreseeable future, we are going to be in our homes, it might be a good idea for you to go ahead and do the pro option. But if that's not feasible, there are a few limitations that the free option has. Those currently are, you're not allowed to poll. So the polling that we just did, are not allowed to do that with the free option. Second is you can record with the free option, but it won't be recorded to the cloud. So it'll just be recorded to your computer. And depending on how long that meeting is, it could be a lot of, storage used up for that. Second is that with the free option, like it says right here, you are limited to a 40-minute meeting. So it will boot you off after you've reached that 40 minutes and won't be able, you would have to start it again, or that meeting's ended. With the Pro, as you can see, you can have a meeting that lasts 24 hours. So that would be a long time, but anyways. And then the last thing is something that has happened now that everyone has gone to Zoom, is that they are limiting the amount of phone numbers that are used when people are needing to call in for audio with the free option. So if you are using that option, some people might not be able to call in and use the audio on their phone versus the audio on their computer. So that's just something to keep in mind. But right now, the Pro is only $14.99 if you pay monthly. But if you do it for a year subscription, oh, we're currently on a paid plan. So hold on. Let me move my little thing. Thought I was already signed out. Sorry about that. Okay. So if you decide that it is best for your church to do the pay, if you pay yearly or annually, you get a discount. So we might be doing this for the next few months. So it might be best for your situation to go ahead and do the annual amount. And then it is $14.99 for the monthly. But you just go through. If you need to, you can add on additional things. So like if you think you're going to be doing webinars, you can add that on. And if you need additional rooms and all that stuff, you can add that on, but you just fill in all your information, pick option, put in your payment, and you're good to go. But really, the difference between the two for right now, that might be a limitation for most churches, is going to be the time limit. So 40 minutes to get a lot of the stuff that's needing to be talked about right now, handled might be a little difficult. So, but for $14.99 and to be able to have up to 100 people for 24 hours, that's a awesome option. So, and right now, if anyone has any questions about that, I can go ahead and answer them, but then Ruth is going to show you how to take it from here into scheduling a meeting after you've signed up for your account.
So if you do the free option after 40 minutes, can you restart it, or do they give you a time limit between?
I'm pretty sure you can restart it. There are some limitations right now with everyone going to Zoom, so they might not be able, that might not be something that they continue to do. But like I said, with the phone option, that's now a limitation. But I think that with the free, I'm pretty sure you can restart a session.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to, Hannah's unshared, so I'm gonna now share my screen again. It's a lot of screen sharing, but take you into my Zoom so that you can see how to create a meeting. So you create an account. Basically, it's a email is your username, and then whatever password you determine, just like most online accounts. When you log in to zoom.us, you can, if you click them, you've got a menu to the left. You click the meetings. This is where you schedule a new meeting. If you're using the app on a device, it's pretty clear. I think there's like a little plus sign or something there under, there's a menu at the bottom and it says meetings, and then there's a little plus sign. It's pretty intuitive, like most apps. But if you're creating a meeting here, and here you can see I've got obviously this session. It shows you all your meetings that you've already scheduled, a staff meeting, and then you can actually do recurring meetings. So if you know, for example, you want to do a Wednesday night Bible study and you want to do it every Wednesday at 7, You can go in, and when you create that meeting, you can tell the system you want it to be recurring. And the nice thing about that is, for each of these meetings, there's a very unique link that people have to click in order to get into the right meeting, right? So any old Zoom link will not get you into your meeting. It has to be very specific to the meeting you've created. The nice thing about creating recurring meetings is that these 4 meetings will all have the same link. So if everybody knows that Wednesday at 7 is the Bible study, then they can click the first time they see the link, they can click that link again and get to the meeting, if that makes sense. So in terms of scheduling a meeting, you just click the schedule a new meeting, and it's fairly intuitive. It walks you through listing the name of the meeting. You can use a description if you want. I don't usually do that. Be sure to select whether it's an AM or PM meeting. Occasionally that can be a little problematic if you don't remember to say which one it is. You can say what the duration is, but it doesn't ever cut you off. So if you say an hour and you go 2 hours, it's not like, unless it's the free account, it's not going to cut you off depending on the duration. Make sure you know what time zone you're in. Here's where you would check if it's a recurring meeting. And so you have the opportunity to go in and make it a daily, a weekly, a monthly, or a very specific custom meeting time, and how long you want that to go, similar to your calendar, your recurring calendar kind of functionality. The cool thing here, you can require registration if you want. If you're doing a Bible study and you need to know how many people you have for whatever purpose, if you click the required button, it'll basically be like having them sign up for a webinar. You click the link and it takes you to a form where you put your first name and last name and email. But that is nice, especially if you're gonna maybe email people afterwards and you want to know who was in your meeting. With this format today, everybody just came willy-nilly. I don't know who's really here. I don't have your emails. If I was smart, I would have clicked the registration and kind of made people sign up beforehand. So that's an option that is occasionally very useful. You can generate, like I said, that Zoom link is a unique link each time, and generate automatically would be, I think, the preferred setting for that. You'll see here it says personal meeting ID. It is nice. For my Zoom account, I can schedule all these various unique meetings, but I have a space, a virtual online space that is my personal meeting room. So like this morning before the meeting, I just went into my personal meeting room and shot Hannah an invite and had her come into my room, which was separate from the other meeting space, so that we could talk. So sometimes it's nice for ongoing or standing meetings to just use your personal meeting ID. And you can find that, I'm scrolling back to the top of the page. Well, I'll show it to that in a minute where you can find that. You can require a meeting password. So if your meeting is like a board meeting where you're going to be voting, you don't want anybody to just willy-nilly gets a link to just jump into your meeting. You can give everybody a password for the meeting so that only folks who are allowed in can get in. And you can designate what that is. You can customize the password. You can determine whether or not you want to have video for folks. You can actually start the meeting. Well, you can actually have the whole meeting with video off. And sometimes if you're doing like a webinar kind of format and you're just going to be speaking and there's no interaction, that's a good option. Might make your meeting environment a little more stable. Same is true with the host. Same is true with audio. You can say that you want to have people have the option to be able to use either phone or computer audio. Computer audio generally is easier than, especially if you're going to be on a webcam too. Telephone is helpful for people who don't have access to any kind of screen. If they just want to join and listen in, but they can't see it, having telephone audio is very useful. So they can call in a number, put the meeting ID in, and be on the call. But if they have a computer or a device of some kind, it's helpful. But this enables you to say either only computer audio is allowed or only telephone audio is allowed, or both. It also lets you just determine where they can call from. I think for this meeting, I actually went in and edited, I don't know if you can see my pop-up or not, but it lists all the countries. I went in and added Canada so that if someone decided they wanted to call in from Canada, they could get to the call. Meeting options, you have a few here. You can determine whether or not you want people to be able to join before you join. Sometimes that's useful. If you know you're going to be right to the wire getting to your meeting, that's useful. You can choose whether to mute people as they come in. You can enable a virtual waiting room. That gets a little more complicated because my understanding is with meetings, you have to, once you enable the waiting room, you have to individually release people into your meeting. And if you've got 60 people, that could get a little time consuming. So typically what I would do to get around that is I would uncheck enable join before host so that you can get in your meeting first. And then once you're there, everybody can come on in. I don't know what authenticated users can join means. Honestly, I'm assuming that maybe means that they've already signed up for a Zoom account. You don't have to have a Zoom account to attend a meeting. You just have to have a link typically and a password if that's what's required. So I'm assuming authenticated users are those who have a username and password in the Zoom platform. So you could limit it to that. You can also set it up to record the meeting automatically, which is helpful. If you're planning to record it, go ahead and set it up in here beforehand. So then you don't have to worry about it. It's too easy to forget it once the meeting gets going. Here's where you can also designate alternative hosts. I think I had listed Hannah for the alternative host for this meeting. They do need to be someone who's like got a Zoom account, and they may need to be affiliated with your Zoom account. And then you save that. Once you save it, you can actually go back, scroll back down to the bottom of your screen and edit it. So if you create a meeting and realize you made some mistakes or you want to make some changes, you can go back in and edit the meeting all the way up until right before it starts, is my understanding. Once you've scheduled a meeting, well, let me show you real quick. I'm going to go back to my list of meetings, and you'll see at the top here, it's got upcoming meetings, which is the screen where we are. Previous meetings shows you the meetings that you've had. The personal meeting room is that place that I mentioned that everybody has the option to either choose, do it in their personal meeting space. And so this meeting ID here is always my meeting ID for my personal meeting room. It doesn't change. It's like a static meeting ID, if that makes sense. Once you've got a meeting scheduled, for example, this staff meeting that's coming up, once you've got a meeting scheduled, you have several ways that you can share the information about that meeting. One way that I tend to use the most is the copy the invitation option. So once your meeting you've created your meeting and you saved it, it will pop the screen up automatically after you do that. And you can just hit copy the invitation. Hopefully you can see this pop up. This pop-up gives you the entire meeting invitation, all the information you would want to share with people. And in fact, I find it in some regards to be too much information, especially for people who are not used to using Zoom. But you can just click the copy invitation button and it'll highlight, and then you can go into your, I'm going to move into my Outlook. I'm not sure you can see that. And I can just paste it right into an email and send it out. Typically what I do is, I will, once I've pasted it into my email, I will take out some of the extraneous information and have it just be a real simple, here's the Zoom link, here's the telephone number for your area, and the meeting ID, consider muting yourself and wearing headphones to improve the audio experience. I just try to keep it as simple. I'm going to hand it back over to Hannah, who's going to talk a little bit about sharing the information about your meeting and teaching attendees how to join a meeting. And she's going to do that quick, right?
Okay, yes, I will do it quick. So first, after you get the information that Ruth just showed you with all the how to access the meeting, you will take that and you can send it as an email. You can include it on your website, or if need be, you can use a phone tree, depending on your church's situation. However, if you do use the phone tree and be like, hey, we're having this meeting, I would post it on your website so that they can just click the link versus having to tell them how to, all the little letters and all that stuff. What I am going to do is send you a link real quick. Actually, I'm going to upload a file so you can see what that looks like, and it's going to be in the chat. And a lot of this that's coming to you right now is information on how to let people know how to access it. It just gives you some basic information. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to go ahead and download that so that it's saved to your computer, and you can send that out to the people who you're going to be using Zoom with, and then they can understand. It's just a little quick, frequently asked questions. Next, another way that you can show people things, it is in your email. You can include, you can include this information, which I'm going to drop it into the chat as well. This is what we usually just take this and copy and paste the stuff that's in that Google document into a email. That way it tells them step by step how to access it, and there's not going to be, they won't have as many questions. And with all of these things, they can easily join in and be able to interact in the meeting. So, okay. And I think that's all I have today for about how to publicize the information. Oh, additionally, you can include it on your Facebook page if you need to, but you don't want to share it too broadly if you don't want everyone on it. But make sure you give them the kind of frequently asked questions that's on that Google Doc or the PDF that I uploaded.
Thanks, Hannah. And yeah, I always assume when I send out Zoom information that I'm going to have someone who knows nothing about Zoom. So I really try to start from that space for people, even if it's, you know, if it's offering to troubleshoot with them ahead of time, you know, and I'm going to share my screen to show you a couple of resources as Austin talks a little bit about troubleshooting. But Austin, if you want to talk a little bit about troubleshooting, that'd be great.
Oh, sure. There were a few questions that did come up.
Okay.
Would you like to go through those first? Because that in of itself can be troubleshooting, right?
Absolutely.
So, you know, taking people's concerns into account. So let's see. Are recurring meetings only available on a paid subscription? And Charlotte asked that question.
I don't know. Does anybody know that? I'll crowdsource that one because I don't know. I did not stick with the free Zoom account for very long because I saw the value of having a paid one.
Right.
Hannah said she was going to research that for me.
Okay.
But that might be a good question to be answered for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's available. I'm still trying to find it. I'm not seeing that it's saying specifically must have a pro account to do the reoccurring scheduling. So I would say that it's available for the free one, but I'm still looking into that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Gregorio asks, can someone just share the link of the meeting and the ID and a third person join the meeting with no problem?
As long as they have the equipment they need. I mean, they basically need to have either a computer or a smartphone or a tablet or a landline. The landline, of course, they obviously can't see what's happening, in the meeting, but they can hear everything.
Right, exactly. Ted also mentions that TechSoup is running a 50% off the one-time payment discount. Brings it down to $74.95 for an annual account, which might be a good resource for people to look into. And I'm not sure exactly what she means by the password option, but C. Lamb asks, does the free version have the password option?
Again, I'm not certain about some of those smaller features. The free version is fairly robust, is sort of my understanding. It's fairly similar, except for the time constraints and the recording constraints and a couple of the other perks. But we'll see if we can find maybe an FAQ question that addresses some of those.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So, and Marie says, my experience has had participants have trouble getting the sound to work. I never heard what the problem was, but there's something as a host I could suggest if that problem happens. And I would just make sure that your the person on the other end has got all of their sound settings correct, because it could be that they don't have their sound settings correct. Or it could be honestly just a simple glitch. Like I think Eric was running into that problem of not being able to see the screen for a little bit. And he refreshed the page and rejoined the meeting and it came right back. So glitches definitely do happen. And sometimes there's no way to explain it. They just occur. And all it takes is just a simple refresh and then rejoining the meeting. And then it should be fine after that. But of course, you want to make sure that your sound settings on your end are correct before that. But honestly, it might just come down to it just being a simple glitch. Ruth, is there anything else you wanted to add to
Yeah, I think
that?
that's true. I troubleshooted someone yesterday who every time the screen got shared, she got booted out of the meeting and we could never figure out why.
Yeah, that's
you
so
know, but-
random and odd.
Yeah, it was just random. And we finally moved her to her tablet and she downloaded the app and she was 76. She got on the app and made it work, so
Awesome.
you just have to kind of go with the flow. It does help sometimes though to close everything that's not essential to the meeting on your
Yes.
computer. And sometimes just rebooting, doesn't that fix everything? I mean, sometimes you have to leave the meeting, shut everything down, shut down your computer, reboot and try again. That often will fix many, many issues.
I mean, the constant IT joke about have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again is true for a reason. It is a cliche for a reason. Okay, let's see here. When you sign up for the pro version, it says, quote, one host. Can you still share hosting as you just mentioned? I'm not sure exactly what part it was, but Rusty asked
I'm not exactly sure about that either, Rusty. I have to look into that a little more. I think it needs to be someone who is on your account, and I just don't know quite how that works from plan to plan. Right now, our account includes webinars for up to 1,000, so our plan is very robust. So I just don't know. I just don't know about that, but I have a feeling that you can have alternate hosts, but I do think they still have to be part of your account, even if maybe they're just a basic member. That helps. We can look into that for the advanced training.
Yes. Yeah, I think we are planning to do an advanced Zoom training, so keep that in mind. In terms of the phone in option, will Zoom give a phone number and a specific code for people to enter the meeting?
Yeah, they have a standard list of phone numbers, but they appear with the invitation every time a meeting is generated, and they are typically the same numbers. But with this sort of the extraordinary time we're in right now, I have seen some things that say that Zoom at times is restricting their phone numbers. So, and you may choose, because they're just using so much bandwidth on lots of other things. So, but yes, I noticed in my pro account that I used to just have 2 phone number options, one for New York and one for another time zone. And now I have like a huge long list of phone numbers. So they really are trying to build capacity. But I think with the free account, I'm not sure that the capacity is quite there with the phone numbers.
And Dee asks on here, if you have a church account, can you set up multiple administrators?
Not with the free plan, I don't think.
Okay.
If you wanted to pay per user, you could probably do that. So typically what I've seen people do is they share the credentials,
Yeah.
They just share,
the username and
they'll have
password.
set up one account. The thing with that is, if Nola and I are sharing an account where we just have one email address and password, then Nola and I can't really have meetings at the same time. That's the limitation there. We can't each have separate meetings at the same time if we're sharing credentials.
And Tim brings up a great point here in the chat and says, I was in a meeting yesterday with a couple on phones. I kept hearing noise. Is it likely that was caused by holding phones in hands? Probably. It's probably exactly what that was. So I would recommend, just as another general etiquette point, if you're coming in off of a mobile device, especially a phone, a tablet is a little bit more stationary. But if you are coming in through a phone, I would suggest maybe sitting it on the table, like leaning it up, for example. I know some phones have like a little built-in kickstand that you can use, but not all phones have that. So I guess just find something you can rest it against rather than just holding it in your hand, or just mute yourself. That would fix it too. Let's see. Okay, so Charlotte already asked Gregorio's question. Eric says good luck. Okay, I'll leave that at that. But yeah, as general troubleshooting notes, I would just say, again, just keep in mind your sort of your IT principles, the principle of refreshing the page, the principle of exiting the meeting and coming back in if you have specific issues. Google is, of course, your friend, because I'm sure any and every possible question has been asked to Zoom at some point. And chances are pretty high that they will have some sort of tutorial on their website that explains to you how to do specific features or how to access specific things or fix specific problems. And again, if you have something that you need to bounce off of with another human being, of course, us at the BCM, we're available for any questions that you might have for this. And of course, we're going to be working on our other session for Zoom as well. And I would also suggest, if you're running it if you're trying to run a Zoom meeting as a host and you want some experience with that, because the interface is slightly different between the viewer and the host. Of course, the host has many more features that they can access. Try setting up a test room. You know, go into your kitchen and have your spouse go into the other room on their mobile device and just play around in the environment a little bit. Just experiment. Check out the features, see what they do, note any problems that you run into, and just play around with it a little bit before your Wednesday night Bible study happens. And you get in there and everything is on fire, so you can avoid those problems. So yeah, I would just say my biggest note on troubleshooting is to remember that Google is your friend. And if you get easily confused by reading long tutorials, of course, you can go over on YouTube, and I'm sure that there are many video tutorials that you could also access for specific things. And again, just get into the environment and play around with it, especially if you plan on being a host in the future.
Thanks, Austin. A couple other quick things. I did put the test link in the chat box. So one quick way, rather than going into the meeting link that you've received via email, if you want to make sure all your settings are working, is you just go into the browser, zoom.us/test, and you can work on making sure all your settings are working appropriately before you either host or attend a meeting. The other cool thing that you can do, and you should be able to do as a participant, if you look at your chat box, you see where the file button is. To the right of that, you should see a little menu button that says more, or it has 3 little dots. If you click that, you can actually save the chat. So if you want to see the questions and answers that people have asked and answered during this meeting, you can save the chat. It automatically saves it, I believe, to your hard drive in a folder that pops up on your screen. Now, it won't capture the PDF file itself, like the actual substance of the file, but it will, you know, capture that a file was uploaded. So the save chat option is I think a very cool option if you want to capture any links or information that was shared in the chat during the meeting. So just be sure to do that before you leave. And then it should say chat save, show in folder. And if you click the show in folder link, it'll take you to that file. So I so appreciate your time this morning. Thanks all of you for being with us. I do think there's a need to potentially maybe do an advanced training, so look for that. BCM is actually working on creating some additional content during this time. So, so hopefully you're all part of our, if you go to moravianbcm.org, you can, oh yeah, I'll get to that, Mike, sorry. Yeah, if you go to moravianbcm.org, you can subscribe to our weekly e-news, and that's where we'll be posting our weekly schedule of trainings and or content that might include spiritual growth and development options. Okay, Windsor, we need to chat. I am going to let Mike talk briefly. Mike Reese with the Interprovincial Board of Communication is on the call, and he wants to mention the Board of World Mission grants for congregations. That's information that just came out, but subscribe to our newsletter, and we look forward to helping you guys as we navigate this whole new world. Thanks so much.
Good morning, everybody. While we were on the call, I got an email and then some more information from the Board of World Mission. They are offering grants of up to $200 US from its Moravian Disaster Response Funds to northern and southern province congregations to help defray the costs of critical outreach efforts and ministries, including Zoom. So they're working on that right now. To learn more, you can go to either moravianmission.org or just go to moravian.org and click on the COVID-19 resources menu, and it'll take you right to all the resources that we have up there so far. And you can read on that. Actually, when I was texting Chris back and forth, he'd already gotten 8 people, looking into doing this. So that is an option if you're looking for how to pay for Zoom or any of the other communication efforts you'll be doing. There's an opportunity right there from the Border World Mission.
Can I ask a real quick question?
Of
Anybody, yeah, but you guys that are experts in this, if we're looking about using Zoom for worship, do we need an external webcam? What's the best way to handle that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. There's a ton of different ways to do it. I've seen folks do it with a cell phone. I've seen folks do it with a camera. Remarkably, an iPhone actually works pretty well for it. The camera on an iPhone is pretty good as long as you set it up in the right place and put it in the right way. You can also get really fancy and plug in, a fancy video camera into a board that goes into your computer or but for simplicity's sake, I would start with the phone, the camera we all have, the one that's in our phone, and then begin building from there. There are beginning to be a ton of resources on how to make your Zoom worships look good. Far beyond what I've got to offer. There's lots of folks that are doing this or have been doing it for a while. But yeah, you'd be surprised if you've got a recent iPhone that it'll do a pretty good job to get you started.